Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Redgate Community Circle. And we have several courses that you might like to take a look at. Kendra Little is talking about beginning T-SQL. Steve Jones is talking about DAX and Power BI. Grant Fritchie is talking about query tuning. And this is the reporting services class. This is week 4. And this week, we're going to be talking about adding grouping levels to a report. This is probably one of the most common things that you'll need to do to a report. It is a little tricky. There's a little bit of a learning curve as far as some of the formatting, but I'm going to walk you through it, and hopefully it will all make sense. There's a number of resources for you. Of course, we've got the live class through Zoom, like today. You can watch the videos by going out to YouTube, look for Redgate's channel and the Redgate Community Circle playlist, or go to Redgate University and you can find links to all the recordings there as well. This course as well as all the other courses in the Community Circle. I'm putting my slides, homework, and solutions to the homework out on my GitHub account, so feel free to go out there and download those files. There is a forum dedicated to this class. You can go out there and ask questions or answer other people's questions, just have a nice discussion. And there is an article that you can read about this topic that I wrote probably last year or the year before. Nothing's changed, so take a look at that as well. First, a couple of housekeeping items. These are things that I've brought up before, but in teaching people over the years, I find that they kind of forget about these little weird things that come up. So I just want to remind you that when you create a shared data source, you will have to go back and save it, double click it to bring up the properties, and then make sure you go to credentials, use Windows authentication, and click OK. If you don't, you'll get errors down the line probably in a few minutes when you go and try to create a data set. The other thing that might come up is this problem where Visual Studio is trying to be really helpful and telling you to disable reporting services. Do not do that. On the very far right, it says don't report this extension again. Click that, because otherwise you're going to get Visual Studio all messed up as far as working with reporting services. You may have to actually go in and reinstall reporting services in it. So avoid that issue. What I've found is that there's really two major approaches to developing reports, depending on where you work. You might have an organization that is a very mature, maybe DevOps organization, and all features and requests are very highly documented, and you'll receive documentation about a new report or a set of reports that you've got to create. And they'll have all the information that you need, maybe even some mock-up reports, and that's the best world. However, what I've seen more often in the real world is what I call drive-by requests, where somebody just gives you a call or walks by your desk and says, hey, I have a report request. Can you create this report, and when can you have it done? Obviously, that's harder because you don't have everything you need. And if you work in an organization like that, you might even want to create a more formal project or more formal process, for creating reports so that it's easier and things actually get done more quickly. It might even be the first step towards bringing DevOps into your organization. Who knows? So the first step then is you're going to have to ask a lot of questions. You're going to have to get clarification about the organization, the grouping levels of the report. Are totals needed? Are there parameters that are needed? How is the report supposed to be sorted? And I really recommend at that point creating a mock-up to get approval back to your requester. You might start out doing this on a whiteboard with them, or maybe write it out on a piece of paper, or play around in a software like Word or something like that where you can lay things out. But get buy-in before you really start working on it and what that should look like, because chances are whatever you give them, then they'll know what they want. When they see what they don't want is when they realize what they do want. And this is just going from years of experience why I say that. So you might get a request, something like this. We would like a report that shows sales by territory and year. And I kind of like using this non-process type request to kind of teach grouping, because it makes you think, you know, how are these supposed to go? So that's what I do here. So we might have some questions, or we know we'll have some questions. How do I determine the territory? What fields should actually display on this report? Are there calculations needed? When you're adding grouping levels to a report, you can kind of tell by the request that there's going to be some major grouping levels, territory and year, but there's no natural hierarchy between those two. If it was year, month, or year, quarter, month, that's a natural hierarchy. There's no relationship between territory and year. So which is the highest level? And which is the lowest level? What's the lowest level of detail that this report requires? So the interview produces some answers to these questions. The query is going to be provided, so you don't have to figure anything out. That's good. That's a really good case scenario if you end up with that. Group first by year, then by territory. For each year, show the total sales and the average sales over the territories. So the average sale, not by individual sale, not by customer, but by territory. In the detail row, display the store name, the customer ID, and the sales. And there's also some special sorting requirements. Sort the detail by total sales descending order. Sort the years by descending order. And sort the territories alphabetically. And the report's going to be laid out something like this. Here's the query that you'll need. Luckily, it's all written out. Again, even if you're given a query, sometimes there's some back and forth on that. Sometimes the query doesn't have everything that's needed, or it might not be the right granularity, you know, whatever. In this case, it is, we're grouping by customer ID and by territory and by store. So it looks like it's going to be okay. Here's the original report that you create. And I'm going to next just kind of step you through creating this report. And I've printed out a copy for me so I don't forget anything. So I might take a look at that as we go. I'm going to switch to the virtual machine. So I've already shown you multiple times how to create a shared data source and how to create, you know, start with a new report. So this week, to save some time, I have this base report that I'm going to use. And be sure to go back to the previous weeks if you need to review any of these steps that I'm skipping today. To add a copy of this report, I'm going to right-click and go to Copy, right-click on the project name, and say Paste. Now I'm going to right-click, rename, and get rid of what I don't need, copy of, and get rid of the word base. Okay. Now if I double-click it, that report will pop up, and I've already got the header and footer, data source, and data set in place. So I can just start right in adding the data that I need. So the first thing I'm going to do is insert a table. There's a couple of ways you can approach this. I'm going to show you one methodology that I think is the best. There are other ways to do it. I'm going to start at the detail, and I'm going to build out. Start with the detail, add a grouping that's a parent, and then add another. You can go the other way. I don't recommend it. I think this way works better. Another thing, once you start adding groupings, you're starting to get some complexity to the report. Sometimes things don't work. What I suggest is, instead of fighting with a report, delete it and start over. Sometimes things will work better just the next time you go through. Okay, to get started, I am going to add customer ID, store name, and sales to my report. That is my detail level. Okay. Now the next thing I need to do is add my parent group, my first parent group. Notice down at the bottom, there's a little section here, row groups, column groups. So we're going to be adding row groups. We'll get to column groups later in the class. So the way I'm going to do this is click this little down arrow next to row groups, add group, parent group. And then this little dialog pops up, and I have to tell it what I want to group by. In this case, I want to group by territory ID, and I want to add a group header. Now I can also add a group footer, but what I would like to do, my original design, I had the subtotal on the same line as the territory name. So I don't really need the group footer. So I'll click OK. And when I click OK, you can see that the report changes quite a bit. I now have this big box here for territory ID, and this extra row and this extra column. Okay. You may also notice when I click on territory ID, either here, when I click on this little orange bracket lights up, and you can use the orange bracket to tell you which grouping level the particular cell is in. So if I click here, that is also in territory ID. Okay, so if I click any of those, I'm still in territory ID. So the other thing I'd like to do is I would like to display the territory name, not just the territory ID. And since this cell here is in the same grouping level, I can just go ahead and add it. One thing that you need to know is if you add, for example, a numeric, an integer column to a grouping level, it'll automatically sum. So sometimes you have to get rid of those. Okay, so the next thing is to add a level for the year. So I come down to the row groups, click the arrow, add group, parent group. This time it is order year, and I add a group header and click OK. So now I have another column, I have another row, and I have this big box here for territory year. And again, you can see I have an even bigger orange bracket. All right. So what I would like to do is add some additional row. Well, let's take a look at how the report looks first before I jump in. notice that customer ID and store name are way up here, away from the data that they're labeling. So what I'd really like to do is add some additional columns for my headers. It gets a little tricky. And sometimes, if I don't do reports, and I haven't really done a lot of reports for a couple of years, it does get a little tricky. So what I'm going to do is on the territory ID, I'm going to right click. I'm going to insert a row inside group above. And also, so what this will do is give me an extra row inside territory. So I can actually have one of these rows be my labels for customer ID, etc. I also need to add one to order year so I can have some labels for territory. So I'm going to right click, insert row, outside group, so it'll go into the year group above. And that should be what I need. So what I'm going to do, another thing you can do is, sometimes it's a little tricky, but you can see the little cross arrows there. If I gently select it and pull it up a little bit, I can pop it into another cell. If there's something already there, they'll swap places. See, and sometimes it won't go exactly where you think. So you got to be a little careful. So here, I'm going to type in customer ID and store name. And then I'm going to go up here and delete them from here. Actually, I might be able to get rid of that entire row. We'll leave it. We'll leave it for now. Okay, I'm going to bring this one down. And it's inside the order year group. I'm going to make this one territory name. So basically what I've done is I've added, for the two levels, I've added an extra header row. And I did that by adding, I started with the middle, and I've added one inside the group and outside the group. Go back and replay that part, or take a look at the article if you need help with those. Okay, so I'm making good progress. One thing I need is subtotal at each level. So I need a subtotal at sales, so you can see that or subtotal at order year. You can see how order year has lit up there. So I'm going to go sales, and notice it automatically sums for me. That is what I want. And I also need a subtotal at territory name. Okay, so you can see that. Another thing I can do is add a grand total. I'm going to right click, add total. But what it's going to do is add subtotals at each level. So I'm going to have to do this multiple times. Add total, that one is at the year. And add total, that one is at the grand total level, which is what I want. And then I'm just going to delete those two rows that I don't need. So that's the grand total, and I can get rid of that. And let's just call this one grand total. There's one more numeric field that I need before I am ready to format the money. I need to get an average for in each year. I need an average per territory. So what I'm going to do is come in here and right click and go to expression. I'm going to build an expression. We'll learn more about this next week. But what I'm needing to do is take the sum of the fields for the year and divide it by the number of the territories. The problem is that if we just count the territories, we'll count that every time the territory is listed. So we need a distinct count of the territories, and there is a way to do that. So first I'm going to start with the word sum. You can see I've got some IntelliSense here. And if I click on fields, this gives me all the fields in the data set. I'm going to double click sales and notice that it fills in there and close parentheses. So now I've got a summary of the sales divided by, and I'm going to go into these common functions, and I just know from looking in the past, the function I need is under the aggregate functions, count distinct. Okay, so count distinct will give me a distinct list, a distinct count of values of the territories. So I go back to fields, territory ID, and close the parentheses. So that should, so if there's, you know, $1,000 in sales and 10 customers, then, or I'm sorry, 10 territories, then the answer would be 100, right? 1,000 divided by 10. And click OK. We're going to call this average. All right. I'm going to drag this over in the corner and drag up the bottom. All right, so now we need to format all of the numeric or the money fields. I'm going to go to one, right click, and go to text box properties and go to number. Currency, I'm going to get rid of the decimal places on this one and use the 1,000 separator. Then while that's still selected, I'm going to go over to the properties window and see the format. Now there's no way that I would be able to come up with this format on my own, but if I copy it out and then hold the control key down and go to every place that there is a money field, a money cell, I've got them all selected, then I can come back over here to the format, paste, and then now those will all be formatted. So let's take a look. Oh, I know one other thing I want to do. So I want to extend store name. I want to write a line anytime I'm dealing with money. Okay, let's take a look. It's looking much better. I'm liking it. Okay. Oh, I got store name misspelled. That's not going to go over too well. All right, sorting. That's another thing that we need to deal with, and then we'll do the coloring. So what we need to do is select the detail line, right click. It's not going to work. Let's go down here. Go down to the row groups. Go to group properties in the row group section. Go to sorting, add, and then I'm going to choose which one I want to sort on. I want to sort on sales, Z to A, because we wanted the customers with the most sales to show up first. And I'll click OK. Now I'm going to go to territory, go to group properties. Because it's a grouping level, it's already got a sort in there, but that's not the field that we want to sort on. We really want to sort on the name alphabetically. So I'm looking at the wrong thing. Let's go to the sorting tab. I was right, it's already there, but let's change it to territory name Z to A. So that's what we want to do. Make sure we click sorting, not just general, and click OK. And then go to order year, go to group properties, click sorting, and it automatically, since it's grouped on order year, it's automatically sorted on that, but we want the most recent years to come up first, so we're going to go Z to A and click OK. So let's take a look and see. Before it was 2011, now 2014 shows up, and the most expensive item shows up first. The territory name does not look correct. It should be Australia. I may have accidentally said Z to A on that one. Let's go to sorting. Yeah, this one should be A to Z, not Z to A in Australia. So that looks good. All right. So one other thing I want to do, let's go back to preview. I want to look, always look at the print layout, because if someone saves it as a PDF or prints it out, this has got to be right. It does look pretty good. We're not overlapping. However, notice that the headings are disappearing. So how do we fix that? Well, it's a little tricky. There is a property at the table level for controlling those headings. However, it doesn't work. So I'm not sure what that property is even for. I'm not going to bother looking for it. What I will do is show you how to fix this. So what you do is coming over to this little down arrow and choose advanced mode. When you do, you'll get all these little static items showing up. You'll have to click each one individually and go over to the properties and choose repeat on new page true. Grab the next one, repeat on new page true. Repeat on new page true. Repeat on new page true. And continue on till we get, it's kind of tedious, but I only have to do it once and I'm done. Now, let's take a look. And now we're getting those headings repeated. Okay, so that's much better. Got a weird thing where the very top of the report's not showing up, so I'm going to drag that down a little bit. Now the next step is dealing with the color. And one thing you can do is you can grab, I don't think I can grab a, oh, I can. I can grab, I held the control key down and I grabbed everything to do with order year, except for one row here. I've got everything with order year selected, and I can come up here to this background color property, and I'm going to choose cornflower blue and click OK. All right, so that's all filled in. The other thing I might want to do here is also for these, increase the font size. So I might want to go from a 10 point to a 12 point, and then maybe bold it. Okay, so I want to do the same thing for territory, but I don't want to mess up order years. So I may have to go back and select some individual cells. We'll wait and see how it looks. I'm going to choose the next lighter color and click OK, and that worked. Okay, perfect. This very territory ID, I'm not going to increase the font, but I'm going to, well, let's go ahead and increase the font too. Why not? Select all of those, increase the font to 12, and bold it. And let's take a look. Well, I don't like customer ID and store name blue. So let me grab that one and change it back to white. Okay, and I'm also gonna make that a little wider. And again, if I make it wider, I'm gonna have to go back and check the page properties. I know I had a lot of room on this one. And I'm actually still in print preview mode, print layout mode. So looks really good. The very end, I have my grand total. I probably want to increase the size of that one and maybe even give it a different color. I don't know. Let's make that one 14. And I don't really want to make, let me just move that words grand total over here. And get rid of it over there. And there you go. I probably want to get rid of that blue color. I might even need to make that whiter. Let's change that one to white. So I think that's pretty good. All right, so let's go back to the slides. And that's a report. So we did a pretty good job with that. And here's another layout. So what if you take that report when you're done and you take it to the manager? The manager says we're wasting too much space on the left side. Now this particular report really doesn't. There's a lot of room left, but I have seen situations where this layout was really preferred. And back in the day, the original reporting services, before they made a lot of changes to it over the years, used to have a layout like this. And if I'm remembering correctly, I'm thinking it was version 2008 R2 where adding the groupings added them the way that they do now. So what if I want to go back and create a report like this? How do I do it? So let's take a look at that. I'm not going to worry with this one, just for the sake of time, I'm not going to worry about getting quite as fancy with the layout, not with the layout, but with the formatting and everything, because I've already gone through that here, but I just want to show you how to do the other report, how to change it so you got those headings in that compact way. So I'm going to go copy, right click on the project, go to paste. I'm going to right click, rename, and go to, say, sales by territory and year, compact. So compact layout, space saving layout, whatever you want to call it. All right, so I'm going to double click, and there's my base report where I can start. I'm going to right click, insert a table. I'm going to start like I did the other report. I'm going to start by adding customer ID, store name, and sales. Then I'm going to go down to the row groups, click the drop down arrow, add group, parent group, territory ID, add group header. Click OK. Go to territory ID, click the down arrow, add group, parent group, order year, and add group header. So that's exactly what I did with the first one. So what I need here, let's look at this report again. What I need is the data about the territory to appear above the detail, and the data about the year to appear above the territory. So how do I do that instead of having it, over on the side in those columns? How do we do that? So the first thing I'm going to do is add one more row for territory ID. I'm going to right click, insert row, inside the group above. Okay, so the reason I did this is so that I can have one row for headers, one row for data. Okay, and the next step, pay close attention, I'm going to right click on this column that's just order year, and I'm going to delete it. I'm going to do the same thing with territory ID column. Right click and delete it. Now, if you take a look at down here at the row groups, or you even take a look at the report, you'll see that I did not delete the groups. I just deleted the columns. Okay. So if you get a message, if you delete from some other place, you might get a message that says, you really mean to delete the group too? Make sure you know whether you really mean that or not. But in this case, I wanted to keep those groups. So what I am going to do is here, I'm going to add customer ID. This is the label or the heading, store name. Okay. I also had the word sales here on my report definition. We'll see if we really need that. Okay, so this is the point where I'm going to add in my territory ID. This is the territory ID grouping level. So we're going to add that in. However, it thinks that it's supposed to sum it. So what I'm going to do is right click, go to expression, and then just get rid of sum up here. I don't really need to sum it. I wouldn't want to sum that anyway, but this is the correct level. For that level, all the territory IDs are going to match anyway. It doesn't need to be aggregated. And I'm going to go ahead again. I'm at the territory grouping level, and I'm going to add territory name. All right. So obviously I can get rid of this and get rid of this. So here, I'm going to add order year. Guess what? It did that same thing. I'm going to go to expression, get rid of sum. You don't want to add up the years. And click OK. And another thing that I need to do here is add in the subtotals. So at the territory level, we're going to add in sales. It summed it up. That is right. And at the order year, we're going to add in sales, and it sums it up. Also what we want. The original report did not have headings, have as many headings. Let me bring that up again. It just had the headings for this detail row. It did not list the headings for the other items. You could do that just by adding additional rows inside whichever grouping that you're supposed to be working with. So that looks good. I'm going to go ahead and delete this one. Okay. And obviously I could also add the formatting, the sorting. I'm not going to worry about that for this one because I went through all that in the previous item. But obviously the same techniques. Some things are going to bug me. The same sort of techniques to add the formatting in. And if you take a look at the solution, there is one that does have the formatting and everything that's needed. So that's how you do the compact layout. I actually think it's easier than the other one. It's I felt like it was a little easier just to add an extra row where I needed it, and the other grouping levels just kind of fit right in. Now let's take a look at the next type of report. This one's going to be a little different. It's the matrix report. Notice that the data is pivoted, like you might do a pivot report in Excel. Instead of having the years as regular data in the report, now the years become columns, okay? And then we've got these totals over on the edges. I have to confess, when I first started working with matrix reports, for a long time, I would use the wizard. Matrix reports really scared me. And then one day, and actually the reason I hate to even tell you this story, the reason I decided I needed to learn how to do the matrix report correctly without running the wizard was because I was writing a book on reporting services. And I thought, I need to learn to do this. And then when I did, I found out, oh my gosh, these are so easy. So I'm going to show you how to do this. The first thing I want to mention is that you could take any report. Let's say we had this report. You could take this report, this table, and turn it into a matrix. I'm not going to. I'm just going to show you how you might do that. By, let's say I went here to order, add group. Let me do it up here. Add group. Where can I do it? Add a row group or add a column group. That's what I was trying to show you. It looks like it can only do it at the detail level. If I would add a column group instead of a row group, it will turn this table into a matrix, which I think is why they call them tablets, kind of a combination of the two. I'm not going to do this. Maybe in an advanced, if you get advanced in reporting services, you might do something like this. I'm not. I'm going to show you a simple matrix report. I'm going to start again with the base report just to save myself some time. I'm going to copy that, go to week 4 and paste. And here's my copy. I'm going to right click, rename, and go to sales by territory and year matrix. Okay, I'm going to double click it to open it up in design view. And this time, instead of right clicking and adding a table, I'm going to add a matrix instead. And I end up with this kind of funny looking little object that has a place for rows, columns, and data. Where previously, if I start, I can even add another one here just to show you the difference if you don't have it in mind. If I'm adding a table, I've got a data row and a header row. But if I'm adding a matrix, it's just kind of like a right angle here. It's a little bit different. Get rid of that. So what I suggest is figure out what goes where. What my data, what is my data? My data is going to be the value that I want to sum up. What is it that I'm adding up? Of course, it's the sales, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is go to the data column and choose sales. All right. Notice that not only do I have an orange bracket over here, I've got an orange bracket at the top because column groups go sideways. I guess if I go like that so you can see it. All right. But I don't want to have sales go across the top. And I don't want that to be a label either. What I would like to go across the top is year. If I bring up the report again, I want the order year to go across the top. That's my column group. So what I'm going to do is come in here and say order year. Notice that order year is now showing up as a column group over in this column group area. Order year. Okay. And I can also have some row groupings. Those are going to be the typical things that you're going to see. If I look back at the report, I would like to see for my row levels, I would like to see the territory. Okay. So let's go back. So right here, I'm going to add territory name, insert column. This is the same grouping level. Territory ID and territory name are the same grouping level. So I'm going to go inside group left and choose territory ID. So here, all of those, well, these two anyway, because these are labels at the top. And this one is kind of the intersection of territory. And hopefully you see a problem. I just noticed it. It decided to sum up territory ID. We don't want to do that. So I'm going to go to expression and get rid of that. Watch for that. And I'm going to go ahead and format this guy. Number, currency, 0 decimal places, and the 1000 separator, and click OK. Let's run that and see. Now, the tricky thing about this type of report is you're not going to know how wide it's going to go. And the other thing that I really recommend is not using something that's got 20, 30 items that are going to go across the top. This is going to be just a handful of things. And in fact, in the homework, I have asked you to pivot on territory name instead of year. And that's 10 items. Okay. That's looking pretty good. Chances are, if you do a matrix report like that, you're going to have to change the paper to landscape if you've got like those 10 territory names. Just right now I can tell you that. And it's you're not going to be able to line it up using the ruler. Let's see. Oh, the ruler was already there. We're using the ruler if it's a matrix report, because it's going to expand on its own. You're not going to be able to see that in design view. All right, there's one other thing, and this is so cool. I need to add totals. I need totals across the territories and totals for the years and a grand total for everything. So easy to do. I'm going to go to the sum sales cell. That's hard to say. Right click and add total row. I'm going to do it again, same cell. Right click, add total column. Okay, so now I've got my two totals, and then I've got this one empty cell, kind of the intersection of everything, the grand total of everything. I'm going to right click, choose sales. Now it might be that, and I can't really remember, it may have inherited the formatting from the original. Let's take a look, and I'm going to cross my fingers on that, but I'm hoping it did. So the row and the column numbers did inherit the formatting, however, the grand total didn't. So that's easy enough to fix. We'll just go to the grand total, go to text box properties, number, currency, 0 decimal places, and thousands, and click OK. And then I'm probably going to want to click that, click that, click that as far as bolding. So I've got my heading across the top, I've got my totals all bolded. And that's really all there is to doing a matrix report. What I suggest is for each of these, go back and play them and try to follow along step by step. There's also information out on that article that's on Simple Talk. Try to follow along with that. I believe that there may be a different database for that series of articles. I'm not really sure, but you should be able to go ahead and restore any different databases as well. I think that's it for this week. Good luck, and next week we'll do some more fun functionality, expressions, making the report interactive, puts the fun in functionality, I think. So have fun playing with reporting services, and I'll see you next week.